that. It was a socially engineered black folk into the lowest level of real life monopoly game, which means that they maldistributed almost 100% of all this nation's land, resources, rights, privileges, businesses, and controls of all levels of government into the hands of the dominant white society. Black folk haven't got a snowball's chance of ever being a competitive people. You might struggle for the last another 2 or 3 years, but it's going to wipe you out pretty soon. You came out of slavery in 1860 having 1/2 of 1% of this nation's wealth. Here you are 150 years later, guess what? You still own 1/2 of 1% of the wealth. And in a nation, in a race-based society, it's what you own and control that determines your equal opportunities and your rights and privileges. It's had nothing darn thing to do with civil rights. That's a waste of time. Doesn't have anything to do with the voting, but that's an intellectual masturbation process. Mm-hmm. They ain't gonna do any good. What you need is own and control wealth and power.
They said intellectual masturbation. I heard you say that earlier on something I was watching. You said they get off, but it does nothing for them.
You got it down pat, bro. That's like you starving to death. Somebody give you a steak, you rub it outside your stomach. They ain't gonna do you any good. They ain't doing damn thing for you. Quit playing with black folk. So now I left the president. I ran a campaign, I guess. Well, let me go back. I guess I've been very privileged in all my years now. I'm 85 now, so I reached the peak. I don't have to get along with anybody damn body anymore.
Man, that's a beautiful feeling.
You know, yes, that's one of the enrichments of age. But I decided after all the years of playing politics, I guess I was privileged in the sense of being the only black in the nation that ever was a campaign manager, not in a campaign, but a campaign manager for governors, for presidents, for attorney generals, for state legislators, and congressmen. No other blacks had that. I felt for that reason, I had an obligation to get out here and do something for black folk. And so I don't play any games with black folk. I know some friends I know that you all probably have on your shows where they're just trying to get some self-indictment elevation. I don't need it.
And what did you think about Kamala Harris and Cory Booker? I know you said voting is an illusion.
They're probably nice people. They ain't gonna do anything for black folk. You say, I have yet to this day ever heard or seen not one president, not one candidate for public office ever get up and say, here's what I'm gonna do for black folk. That violates the entire premise of politics. Politics is a process that decides who's gonna get what benefits out of life. It's based on a very simple premise of quid pro quo. Politics, as you know it now, never existed until about the 1500s. And what it says, we will determine who gets what blessings, and who suffers. And so, consequently, nobody's ever stood up and said, here's what black folk are going to get. And you're talking about the candidates. The first thing these black folks should be asking is not what candidate you're going to represent or going to vote for. Who cares? What you should be asking is, what are you going to get? What are you voting for?
That's right. What are you going to get in exchange for your vote?
That's right. What do you get? What are you voting for? What are you going to get? Mm-hmm. If you ain't get the damn thing, why are you voting? And see, black, and not one candidate, in all the years I ran campaigns, not one candidate or one president or one party, political party, neither the Republican or the Democratic Party, Libertarian Party, Green Party, not one has ever promised that if I get the black vote, here's what I'm going to do for black folk.
It's the first year it's ever happened, and I think the only reason it's happened is because of all the hell that's being raised on social media. And, like a lot of times when these presidential candidates come up here, we ask them specifically, what is your black agenda?
See, you're right. And what did she say to you?
Well, I mean, they all have little things here and there. The only person I've seen have a real loud black agenda is Mayor Pete. He has the Douglas plan, which is based on Frederick Douglass.
Okay, right. And see, what most of them are going to do is give you that old game that they used during the formation of this country in 1789. Mm-hmm. And they met up in Philadelphia and says, we're gonna build this nation, and we're gonna create a document that make us the cradle of democracy. It's gonna be a constitution. And they said, and we're gonna make this a land of opportunity and freedom for everybody.
Yeah, right.
Okay. So they met in Philadelphia for a whole week. You know what they did for a whole week? They closed the doors and put guards on the windows in Philadelphia, and said, "Now we gotta write this constitution, but we got a problem now. If we're gonna offer this as a land of opportunity for everybody, isn't it inconsistent and hypocritical for us to be getting ready to enslave all these damn black folk we're bringing into the country? Is how we're gonna get past that?" They said, "Well, what we'll do, we'll run a game on them. They've been running that same game ever since. What we'll do in the Constitution, we use very broad and ambiguous terms. In certain terms, certain of those broad ambiguous terms would apply to whites, and certain apply to black folk. So in the United States Constitution said, we the people, all God got a God-given right to life, liberty, and pursuit of happiness. Initially, it wasn't even happiness; it was really a property, because black folk are going to be property. And so that's what it was structured on. And they said, what about black folk? When they read the Constitution, they said, what we'll do, let's use other words. Let's use code words like those who are indebted, those who are in bondage, those who are property. Those are 3/5 of a human being.
Mm-hmm.
Those who are equal to a field animal. And our people never figured that out. So you got all our civil rights leaders running around for years and running for public office like you're talking about we got rights. You don't have any rights in the Constitution. There's no rights for blacks in the Constitution. The United States Constitution in 1789 was strictly the first affirmative action plan in the country, strictly and solely for whites. And those who later on could pass for whites. That's what it's about. Black folk are the only people in this country that can't pass for white. And when I left the White House with President Carter in 1970, the Office of Management and Budget says, we're going to now make everybody in here that comes into the country, we're going to start qualifying them as being white. Up to 1970, as an example, Hispanics were always white. They were always whites. But what happened in 1970, I was over education with the state of Florida at that time, and I had the dubious honor of writing the second affirmative action plan in the United States, but the first one for black folk. When I wrote the affirmative action plan, it was approved by the governor and the state cabinets, the system. And I didn't write it for minorities and poor folk, those broad terms, and people of color, and for diversity, and for gays and lesbians and midgets and humpbacks and one-eyed people. I wrote it strictly for black folk.
So listen, is there any way that blacks can correct the resource imbalance?
Yeah, you can. See, when you start playing the game. That's why my second book, I wrote the first book called Black Labor, White Wealth, and which Ebony Jett calls the second Bible for black folks around the world. It sells all over Europe and into Africa. That was to show you every technique, every trick, every custom, every policy that the major white society used to lock black folk into a lowest level of a real life monopoly game. And they maldistributed all the resources, period. It showed us that in very graphic terms. I think you got to have a copy of that bottom book over there.
Yes, sir. Black Labor, White Wealth.
That's what that was for.
We got dirty little secrets. We got more dirty little secrets.
Right. Okay. Thank you. Now, this is what they call it around the world. They call this the second Bible for black folk. It shows you exactly what happened to you, and that you have no rights. And power. I follow that with powernomics.
Oh, it's behind you.
Yeah.
There you go.
Oh, okay. Yeah. And this was a national plan. What was the question you just asked me? I ran past it. You asked me.
How do we catch up as black folk?
How you catch up? This is a national plan for black folk. It says the national plan to empower black Americans, period. And what you first thing you got to do, and make it long story short, you got to have what you never had in this country. That's a group self-interest. You've been inculcated and coordinated and brainwashed and believing that you got some obligation and responsibility to save the world. You got to save everybody first before you save yourself. Now, I'm a pilot. I don't fly anymore. I'm too old to be flying. But one of the first things I would tell people on my plane as passengers, the first thing you do, if we lose cabin pressure at 30,000 feet, we don't have any cabin pressure at night over 10,000 feet. If you lose cabin pressure, a panel over your head will fall down.
Right.
When that mask falls down, the first thing you all should be doing is putting the mask on yourself. Quit trying to save everybody. Why does always got black folk marching trying to save it? We're marching for gays. We're marching for women. We're marching for poor people. We're marching for the handicapped. And yet you only control 1/2 of 1% of wealth. You haven't got a snowball's chance. And in the end of slavery, as I said, you had 1/2 of 1%. Guess what? The average white person at that point in time had 3,500 times more wealth than the average black. That means that 99% of everything in this country was in the white society. And it's still in the white society. I don't care from Vermont all the way to California, San Diego. 98% of everything of value is locked in the white society. 87% of it's frozen, locked in the white society. You can't get it out. So all you got to compete with is about 13% is up for grabs. And if black folk don't learn how to compete for that 13%, you are through. And right now, that's what's happening around the world. You see all these, we're going to implode in this country. Same thing happening in Germany with the Jews. And there's a book out called Hitler's Willing Execution to say the same thing. When certain kind of things began to happen to you as a group, you better be very careful. And he wrote that as a big, big book, and about what's going to happen. And they started exterminating the Jews. Why? Because you got a group now that you all don't know about called the Council of 300. What they want to do now is say, we got too many people on the earth, and we're going to start losing resources. There won't be enough resources left. We got water. We're going to have water shortages coming. And when water shortages come, what follows that is food shortages. Right now, 20% of the world is suffering from water shortages. We're going to start having water shortages in this country. We have water shortages and have food shortages. So what the council and all these government, all these rich people on the earth are saying is that we got to start getting rid of some of these people. We're going to start with the non-producers. Now, who are the non-producers in America? The only people in America that produces absolutely nothing except sweat is black folk.
That's real. I get what you're saying. I feel you.
Do you understand what I'm saying?
Yeah.
I mean, right now, all of our people that are so successful, guess what? The only thing they produce is sweat. They're running with ball, basketball, baseball, tennis, golf, ball, singing and dancing, producing sweat. Nobody's buying any damn sweat. Now, how are you going to feed yourself? We don't produce anything. We don't have any industries. And we had a chance to get industries in the 1700s when the Industrial Revolution went through Europe. Black folk were slaves. When the Industrial Revolution went through America in the 1800s, we were still enslaved. We own and control absolutely nothing.
You don't think that's changing now a little bit?
Oh man, no. It's getting worse. As a matter of fact, let me give you a difference. Right now, we got all these people that you're running for public office talking about. We gotta look for eradicate poverty. You cannot eradicate poverty. Poverty is a fix. It's a given. It's a given. You cannot eradicate poverty. Why? Because just like you can't eradicate, you got an up, you got a down, you got an in, you got an out. That is a fix. You cannot change it. And they always got people wanting to eradicate poverty. What you should be saying is leave poverty alone and go down and try to figure out how to get black folk out of poverty. Don't be trying to eradicate poverty. Leave poverty alone and get blacks out. And see, so what we need to have more equality. On a race-based society, you cannot have equality. It's impossible. The whole point of a race is a contest.
That's right.
See, a race, you all don't go to the Kentucky Derby to try to have all the horses being equal, do you?
No, you want one to win.
You got it again. You're a smart man. you want to see who comes in first, second, or place.
Right.
And so, in a race-based society, why is it called a race? Race never started, never existed on the earth until the 1500s. And that's when it started. That's where racism comes from. They didn't pick racism just out of thin air.
It's a social construct.
It's a social construct.
Yeah.
It's a social construct. They started, what we're going to do now that Columbus discovered America, you got in 1492, we got a lot of land over there. It's pretty much vacant. And we need to go over there and try to get that land. And what they said, well, let's go back. How are we going to do it? They said, well, let's see. Back in about 1446, we had a guy named Henry the Navigator that went around the coast of Africa, and he picked up about 16 blacks, Africans, and brought them back to Europe, gave them to the Pope in the Vatican. The popes that we use as slaves. And so the Vatican used blacks as slaves. That was one of the first ones. That's from about 1446 up to about 1488. And Pope Innocent came out and said, well, having these people as slaves, that's a good thing. And so why is that important now? Because you see, the Fox Channel be telling you all, while blacks complain about being slaves, we've always had slaves. No, you have not. You may have had slaves, but not based on skin color. And Pope Innocent came out and slave anybody based on the traditional manner. You can only slave people for being either a prisoner of war or for personal indebtedness or religious persecution. He said, let's skip that now and slave them based on skin color. That was her start. That's her trigger in 1488. So when Columbus discovered America in 1492, he had all this land over here. In that particular time.
Yeah, water for you.
Excuse me, thank you.
Yes, sir.
At that particular time, Europe was being decimated. Europe was under major problems. The entire European continent was being decimated with crime, famine, and diseases. They didn't know what to do in the late 1400s and early 1500s. And all of a sudden they said, since Pope Innocent says that we got some people we can use now as slaves, and we got
Take your time, brother. We here. We got time.
Oh, y'all done put me out of here in a few minutes.
No, man, we got time. I've been waiting on you for years.
You tell me a tale.
No, I'm not. People been asking for you for years. We got time.
Okay, I don't want to take up all your time.
No, you good.
Ain't no white man coming in here with a sign saying, "Oh, get him up out of here." He's talking all this shit.
So, based on religion, personal indebtedness, or prisoner of war, let's use on skin color. And so by 1500s, they would use that and save America. So a race started. A race is a contest. That contest started between 9 European nations. Portugal, they all said, let's get in the contest so we can go to the Americas first and capture all that land and build wealth. That's what they came here for.
Mm-hmm.
Now you all get by that stuff about they believe in about the Constitution, but they came here for religious persecution. Nobody came here for no damn religious persecution. They came here for happiness. Nobody can get on a damn boat and sail across the Atlantic coming to America for happiness. They're that stupid. They came here for enrichment. Every tourist immigrant came to America. They came here for personal enrichment. That's what they came here to get values, resources, and they started bringing people. So all these countries were competing to try to capture Americas and build it up for enrichment. And that's what happened with America. When they got to America, later on, they would jump up. Now, they said, well, we got all this land now. We got these people. Let's draw the Constitution. That's what so as I told you a few minutes ago, they met in Philadelphia, says, let's take all this land. We're going to create a document called the Constitution. That was in 1789. We're going to ratify this. And we ratified, it's going to be a social construct that the brought here just mentioned to you. The construct is that, how are we going to do that? It's well at the top. Let's all the Europeans that got money want to invest in the United States. They got rich people. And that'll be the top scale. They build land. That's Benjamin Franklin, George Washington, all those guys, and Thomas Jefferson. They were wealthy people. They said underneath that, that's the top level. Underneath that, we set up a management class to bring in poor whites. They'd be the management class. And at the bottom, we're going to bring in these blacks. They have to be managed and classify them as property, as non-citizens. That way they'll never get anything. We got them locked in box. That's in the Constitution. And that's how they got you. The first thing they did the next year in 1991, they passed the first immigration laws. Says, let's bring in all these poor people. This is a nation, an immigrant nation. It's basically for whites only. And black folk, you are not citizens. You have no entitlements, no rights, and no privileges, and nothing. Everything we put into the hands of the dominant white society.
Why is it expected for black wealth to drop in the future?
Oh, for a certain reason, because increasingly, they know that you don't own anything. Wealth creates wealth. Wealth creates wealth. And when they talk about slavery, what blacks don't have any wealth was because they took, whites captured your wealth. Labor is wealth. Labor, you can't have wealth without labor. That's the point I'm bringing to you. It's impossible to have wealth without labor. And so in the 1500s, they said, well, that's what we're going to do. We're going to all be in this race now. We're going to compete between the French, the Germans, the British, the Spain. We're going to go to America. We're going to compete to get the resources. And so they said, let's take this. We're going to come up with a new thing called capitalism. Capitalism came out of the land and the Pope Innocent's thing about slavery. They said, when you go to America, here's what you're going to do. Practice capitalism. That means owning the land, the tools, the resources, and using someone else's labor to enrich yourselves. You understand what I'm saying? Mm-hmm. And since black folk couldn't enrich themselves, everybody else came to the country, enriched themselves off of black folk. They took your labor from you. And then everybody became rich for it. And that's why when slavery ended, as I said a few minutes ago, the average white person had 3,500 times more wealth than blacks.
So how do we catch up now? How do we make sure that we can at least catch up on the financial freedom as much as possible?
You asked a good question. You should be running for office instead of Booker and Harris.
They all light skinned. They can do
it. You're all funny, and you're right on target. No, you do it. You start in the books, as I said in my books. Mm-hmm. First thing you develop two things they took from you in slavery. Two things from you that are key to getting to the points you are on how you're going to solve it. One, they stripped you of your wealth. Mm-hmm. Your labor was your wealth. You never gained anything from it. They got it, captured it, and spread it around. And that's like in resources. For instance, land. Everybody coming to the country got land but you, as a race. They said we're going to start building wealth based on land. And George Washington, the first one, says, well, all the wealth is going to be in the land. I want 100,000 acres of free land. And then Thomas Jefferson said, well, if he's going to get 100,000 acres of free land, I want 100,000 acres of free land. In Patrick Henry, you all read about it in your history book, that said, give me liberty, give me left. He also said, hell, give me some land. I want 65,000 acres of free land. And so what the white society did while blacks were being enslaved, they gave every immigrant coming to the country, as soon as his foot hit the ground, he picked up over 750 acres of free land per immigrant. then for every slave they only got another 150 acres of free land. And so after about 100 years, this country had given away over 2 billion. They gave away 2 billion acres of free land to immigrants. Now, why is that? Now that's where your wealth is. Now, in that land, not only the value of the land, but in that land, what do they have on? They got timber, gold, chrome, magnesium, gold, silver, oil,
resources.
Resources.
Yeah.
That's the resources. Blacks don't have any resources. Mm-hmm. So when you came and say, "I want 40 acres of a mule," it's you got to be crazy. Not gonna give you 40 acre mule. We just gave away 2 billion. We're gonna give you anything. And the other Europeans came in about the same time with 1862. They gave us, and all the newcomers, you're gonna get 150. And coming from Europe, you cross the Mississippi River to develop the Western countries. They gave away 20. They gave away 20 in 24 hours. They gave away over 2 million acres of free land. Mm. They started railroad lines, 11 railroad lines. They gave them 24 million acres of free land. But blacks never got any land. So what we're going to do now to play the game to answer your question, we got to go for resources. But the two things that are hurting us, we don't have any resources because they stole that. The second thing you don't have is they stole your social cohesiveness.
You mean as far as like unity and group operation?
That's right.
Okay.
They did not allow you to play the game, to be together, come together. That was a threat. It's intimidating. It was intimidating during slavery. It's intimidating right now for black folks start talking about coming together.
Because from what you said, if we got 13% of whatever we're fighting over, makes it seem like it's not enough for everybody.
That's right. Not enough. It's a survival of the fittest. Mm-hmm. It's a survival of the fittest and the strongest. And so, that's where they made the biggest mistake. They took black folk and misled the wrong way. Went into social integration rather than trying to get the resources. Rather than trying to get resources.
Well, when Dr. King was pivoting to go get them resources, that's when they killed him.
That's right. But that's why, did you hear that point? Say it again.
When Dr. King was pivoting from civil rights and, civil liberties to go get that money, that's when they killed him. He was organizing the Poor People's Campaign.
That's right.
Yeah.
They killed him then because you know why? Because Martin Luther King, right before he got assassinated, 3 months before that, you know what he said to the country? He said, "I got to admit," he said, "I think I made a big mistake."
Yeah.
He said, "I think I've led black folk into a burning building."
Burning building. Yeah.
You remember that?
Yeah.
And because he says he said you cannot have social integration unless you have economic integration. Mm-hmm. And you cannot have economic integration unless you do what? Unless you redistribute some of these resources into the hands of black folk. And that's when they killed him.
Yes, sir.
They're going to turn it loose.
What did you think of Barack Obama being president?
But Barack Obama is a joke. Barack Obama didn't do a darn thing for black folk. As a matter of fact, he hurt black folk in 2 ways. First of all, he had 8 years to do something for black folk, but he carefully and judiciously involved and judiciously avoided doing anything for black folk. And most of my white friends told me in politics, and I was always with president governors, they said, "Hey, we would never voted for Obama. We know he's going to do something for black folk. We knew he would never do anything for black folk." Mm-hmm. And so, but that's the first thing. He never did anything for black folk. But he used that old thing that they did back in Philadelphia in 1789. He used very broad, ambiguous terms. I'm the president of all the people.
They like to say a rising tide lifts all boats.
That's a stupid thing.
Yeah, because the black people boat got a hole in it.
That's right. It's in the bottom of the damn right.
Yeah.
But black folk, well, if a rising tide would lift all boats. If a rising tide would lift all boats, why when all these immigrants coming here and building industries and businesses and blacks were slaves? Why didn't they rise? Because they were excluded. Black people are outside and underneath the system. You're outside and underneath the system. And so they don't let you come together. And how they stop you from coming together, since they wouldn't let you coalesce during slavery, they come up with this whole concept called social integration. Social integration is a divisive issue. It divides you. It doesn't pull you together. It's a weakening process. You understand what I'm saying, bro? Mm-hmm. It weakens you. If I put a cup of coffee right now in front of you and pour cream in it, do I make it stronger?
Hell no, you make it weaker.
That's right. So black folk went for social integration.
I've always asked, has integration helped to harm the black community? I think it harmed.
Knocked the black folks' brains out. Black folk had up 100 times more before social integration hit. See, I'm old enough to tell you all that. You're all not old enough to know that yet. Mm-hmm. When I was a kid, see, we had something. We didn't have the resources we needed as much as we needed, but we had something. We had one of the things that's key to get to your question about where do we start. We had communities. We had communities all over America. In every city had a major community. Here, Harlem, places like that. We had our communities. We didn't have everything we wanted, but it was ours.
Yeah, we only hear about Black Wall Street. Sometimes you hear about Bronzeville in Chicago. I can't remember the town in North Carolina, but we don't hear about that. They were literally those communities all over the country.
That's right. Well, Sweet Auburn and Atlanta, Georgia, that's had all the big hotels, fine restaurants, and everything. In North Carolina, what you're talking about now, see, I grew up in Winston-Salem, North Carolina. Let me use that as an example. Mm-hmm. I grew up in Winston-Salem, North Carolina. And we weren't looking for this social integration. You know why? Because we had our own businesses there. We had our own businesses. My family was part of one that had the only black bus line in the entire United States. The only black bus line. And I said we had a bus line. I'm not talking about 2 or 3 buses. We had over 500 buses.
Wow.
In Winston